this video, we'll be looking at the Workflow Designer inside of Resolve Actions Express. And this is really where the magic happens. So the great thing about Resolve is that it allows its users and developers to leverage as much of their own custom code as they'd like, or, more importantly, leverage a huge host of pre-built integrations, activities, and other use case template content out of the box. So for example, if we look at the workflow up on my screen, we can see these visual activities or these building blocks that are comprising our process. We can even zoom out to a map here and easily navigate through the workflow to understand exactly what it's doing. Each and every one of these building blocks that we call activities can be given a custom name, and each one will produce some type of output that's passed downstream. Now, what does the configuration of these activities or things like these if-else branches or while loops look like? Well, not only is it visual and easy to understand when looking at a complete workflow like this, but the process of building one, which we'll dive further into in another video, is easy as well. So let's say, for example, at some point during my workflow, I need to create a ticket or some type of record in an ITSM. I'll drag this activity over to my workflow, open up the settings. I can easily select my ServiceNow instance here. And of course, these integrations for ITSMs exist across the enterprise space, but in this example, we'll show ServiceNow. Using Resolve's auto-discovery of tables and forms, I'm able to select any table that I'd like, whether it's vanilla or something that was custom built in my instance. And then using Resolve's auto-discovery of fields, all of the standard and custom fields that live inside of that particular record are accessible right here from within the UI. In fact, we are even going to inherit things like enums or dropdowns that you would normally see inside of that UI. We'll get rid of that. And to show another example, let's say I need to maybe retrieve information on memory utilization inside of a Linux or Unix host. Well, I can navigate to that category, drag over this Linux get memory info activity, open the settings, and as we see, I'm presented with a few basic input fields, a host name and a username password combination with which to do authentication, and the secure port over which I can make my SSH connection. Removing that, let's take a quick look at the flow controls, things like if-else branches, while loops, and as we can see, a number of those are being leveraged here. So we can put little formulas together to look for specific output types, make intelligent decisions based on those output types, and of course, if you look at the bottom left, they all function in the same drag and drop way, where we can add multiple branches, multiple paths, and easily get off the ground architecting out our otherwise tedious manual process with just a few clicks and drags. What else can we do in the Workflow Designer? Well, on an individual activity basis, we can also attach specific notes to give others on the team information about what we configured here and why, as well as give ourselves a good reminder when we come back to this workflow sometime in the future. We can also test in a development or QA instance how this workflow will respond to receiving certain input parameters from an external source. Imagine a scenario where an automated workflow is triggered when a specific alert or ticket is generated inside of an external system. Additionally, we also have built-in documentation. So we can of course give our workflow a description. Any activities that have specific notes will be listed in a table at the bottom. We can also apply one or more tags to our workflow, which makes for easy sorting and searching later on, as well as provide documentation in a rich format here, which includes things like graphics and screenshots. Furthermore, we have built-in version control. So if we look at the history section here, we can actually roll back or roll forward changes committed by ourselves or other users on the team. And speaking of the development process, we can also export these workflows from a development or QA instance and import them directly into production using a very convenient graphical import wizard. Lastly, users of Resolve Actions Express can also enjoy granular role-based access controls, where on a per user or per group basis, we can assign read, write, execute, and ownership permissions to an individual workflow. It's also important to note that we can call a workflow from another workflow. So for example, if we bring this run workflow activity up here, we can actually specify a sub or child workflow to run, as well as pass any number of parameters or input variables to that workflow. So for example, we could create a host variable that gets passed and set some type of value. Additionally, we can save entire large complex workflows as templates, or even best practice representations or workflow snippets as templates. That way, either ourselves or other developers in the future can find them in the templates category and easily drag them directly into a workflow, finding that the entire snippet is now populated. That concludes our quick look at the Workflow Designer inside of Resolve Actions Express. Thanks for watching.